All right, so now we have our primordial follicles. So at puberty, we get a host of hormonal activity and we start to go through those cycles. And the primordial follicle then can mature into the secondary and or the primary follicle and secondary follicle. So we have about 20 of the primordial follicles that move up. Okay, and the follicle still looks like this, and these granulosa cells start to enlarge. So they enlarge and look kind of like cuboidal cells. And outside of here develops this layer of cells that we call thecal cells. So the green cells, again, they're still granulosa cells. They just kind of enlarge and get a little bit bigger. This is what's called a primary follicle. This is still a primary oocyte. It's still stuck in prophase 1. You get about 20 of these, and then one continues on to become a secondary follicle. And this process here is stimulated by FSH. Okay, so once this primary follicle starts to become a secondary follicle, again, it's still a primary oocyte. So we have our primary oocyte here. And again, we're still in prophase 1. That's why it's 2N. And we have, hold on here. So here's our follicle, all right. And we have our thecal cells. And the cells are out here like this. And then they start to get more. Okay, they start to go through mitosis and get more cells. So these are the extra or more granulosa cells that are being formed out here. Okay, and they are out here as well. All right, we still have the thecal cells are out here. These are kind of flat cells that are around it out here. And then something else occurs here, and that FSH stimulates the production of another layer of cells, sort of, okay? And this layer is in here, it's inside here around our little primary oocyte here. And this layer of cells is called the Zona Pellucida. The layer of cells out here, this one out here, these are still granulosa cells, but they have a special name now. And they are called, this layer of cells is called the Corona radiata. Okay, so these granulosa cells, I made this space right here because these granulosa cells are starting to make fluid, follicular fluid, and sort of it expands into this weird space. This space here becomes the antrum. And it's just these granulosa cells are just spitting out this fluid into the antrum there. This follicle here is called the secondary follicle. And again, we're still 2H, we're still stuck in prophase 1 here of meiosis 1. So once we get to here, we've got FSH going here. LH is also secreted and is helping to make estrogen. Okay. In fact, the LH acts on the thecal cells, which stimulates the granulosa cells to actually make estrogen. So once we get to this point, this is about the first half of the cycle. So eventually we end up to a point where we're going to finish meiosis 1. So when that starts, after the secondary follicle is formed, then our primary oocyte finishes meiosis 1. So meiosis 1, we're in prophase, so we finish meiosis 1. So that leaves us with 2 daughter cells, okay, and they're both 1N. So now we've gone from haploid to diploid. Okay, but in the female, when meiosis 1 completes, all the good stuff, all the cytoplasm and all of this all go into one of the cells. The other cell, this other cell gets is DNA, and we call that the polar body. So here's the polar body. It's what we have left, and that's just nothing. That just gets reabsorbed or whatever. So all we have left now is this 1N oocyte. And this is now a secondary oocyte. And it starts the process of meiosis 2. But it gets stuck in metaphase 2 now. So it starts meiosis 2, and it gets stuck in metaphase 2. So this 1N little secondary oocyte, so let's build it again. Here's this out here. We have the Corona Radiata out here. This is the Corona Radiata. And then we have the Zona Pellucida in here. In there like that. And then the granulosa cells, which are making, so all these are granulosa cells, and these guys are secreting fluid into this antrum. Again, we still have fecal cells out here. All right, so now we have a mature follicle. So mature follicle, or Graafian follicle, which I think I spelled that wrong, sorry. So we have this Graafian follicle. There's lots of fluid in the antrum. We now have a secondary oocyte, okay, who's in the middle of meiosis 2, and the pressure's on. The pressure is building in here. So here is where we end up to the next step, which is ovulation. So that will be the next video.